Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
How's everybody?
Good.
I was just booking me a room so I could come and see y'all next weekend.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. I normally book a little further ahead of time, but I've been having problems booking lately. I don't know what the problem is. Um, did I tell y'all the last time I came that they canceled on me the night before I was to leave? They said that they had flood damage, and so I don't know. They may have flood damage. Are y'all getting flooding like we are in the West? Um,
Yes.
So that may happen again. I may be sleeping in my truck out in the parking lot. But seriously, the night before I was to leave in the middle of the night, I got an email that my reservation was canceled. And then they wouldn't answer my phone call, and they said that they had closed because of storm damage. And so I had to find another place to stay last minute. I had to go through one of those sites rather than booking directly. That I guess they allot rooms to them, but the hotel didn't. None of the hotels had any, and so that kind of ran into that this time. But I was able to get through a site tonight and find a room this time. I don't know why does everybody want to go to Goldsboro. I like it there, but I'm not really understanding that. But I guess it's all right. Okay, what time is it? 7 o'clock. It's time to get started. Thank you all for joining me tonight. So let me share my screen. Well, I guess we could just go to the stars of the week to start with here. Who are our stars of the week? We got 5 stars of the week. Y'all just showing out this week. We got 5 stars of the week. We'll start with Shaquetta. She has the most points. She's been turning in them. She's been working, showing out a little bit. But thank you for that. She's keeping up and staying a little ahead. Those that are ahead on our actual evidence this semester, our employee development plan, are Lauren, Sandy, and Paula. So congratulations to y'all. And the first to turn in her interview, which I really enjoyed, by the way, was Pauline. I really enjoyed reading that interview. She said some very interesting things. Share some of the things that she said that were a little bit, I thought, are a little bit out of the ordinary, Pauline, about what the interview that you did.
I'm trying to think what I said. I don't remember. um, mm,
The process of how they get teachers.
let
Let's look at that right quick. Let me
me
share.
look. My brain is fried. It's
That's okay. That's quite all right. Let me close some of these emails that I had and get back to our shell here. Let me go to our grade book. Get that out of the way. Okay, she talked about getting two teachers who were having a dispute together. Both parties have made several complaints on one another. I'm going to tell a story on that one. Uh,
yes.
I've got a story to tell on that. Um, and then termination process, employee retention, employee development. Um, um,
I know which one you're talking about.
all
Yes.
right, tell me about it then.
Okay, so this was a situation where a counselor and we had a relationship, a previous relationship that didn't end so good.
Yeah,
So I was so nervous. I couldn't sleep these nights because he was really taking advantage of everyone and just taking advantage of the principal and HR's grace with him. And I was just really scared because I just felt like he was going to say, like, oh, it's just Pauline's being biased towards me. And, just, yeah, it wasn't a good feeling to be in, a good situation. I made me so nervous. I couldn't sleep those nights. I had a
yeah.
taking medicine to go to sleep. It was terrible, terrible.
Yeah, yeah. But this is, and the reason I pointed this one out is in these tough times for recruitment, we don't want to get rid of people unless they do something major. And you have to be willing to have critical conversations. If you can't be a leader until you can let somebody go who can't teach school A or who continually flaunts the rules. Everybody knows if they're physically or sexually abusing kids, it's easy to let them go. But
Mhm.
but the issue is the minor things like not showing up, not doing it. But the major thing is, for some reason, we think that not being able to teach is a minor thing. It's the thing. You got to be able to, this notion of, well, until you can let somebody go because they can't teach school or won't teach school, you can't know what's in their heart, why they, all you know is they don't. If they don't teach school, you got to let them go. And you have to have those critical conversations. And that's what I liked about yours. Yeah, it's not easy. Now, for somebody like me, but I'm kind of abnormal. For normal people, it's hard. And I get that. I get that. It's hard for normal people. I'm not telling you I'm a good person. I'm telling you that I'm not a good person. That's my point. That's a character flaw in me that I have those conversations easily. But for normal people, it's not easy. And I'm not minimalizing it's what I mean. I know how hard it is. I know
I
real
think,
hard.
I'm sorry. What I think I learned from that is just when it comes to situations like that, really make sure your T's are crossed and
Documentation.
dotted, and just, and if you don't know, be okay with saying I don't know. Let me call someone that does know. I
Yeah.
think that
I,
just made me hyper focused, but I think I took that as a takeaway. Like, treat every situation like that as focused as I was. Continue to do that with
like you're
other.
going to go to court and you need your documentation. We were talking about walkthroughs last night. Um, Stephen was talking about, they call them look-ins in Guilford. I don't care whether you call them walkthroughs, look-ins, checks, or whatever. Make sure you've got a document in your hand, whether it's a check sheet or whether you're going to script it or code it or whether you're going to check it. But make sure there's a written document. That's documentation, folks. And if you don't have a document, you can't bring it to any kind of action or an action plan or an improvement plan or a dismissal. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. You
Yeah.
can't say, well, the first thing they're going to say is they didn't support me. And you say, well, I was in your room 32 times in the
Yeah.
fall semester. Where's your documentation? Well, I was just doing walkthroughs. Well, they didn't happen. So
Like, we
most of us
literally
should
had
have
to
a little
keep
checklist,
making
if nothing
that
else.
checklist. We tried several times.
Yep.
We implemented this. This
Yep.
person wasn't, responding,
Yep.
just always having something to say. But we need to show like tons and tons of times
Yes.
that
Yes.
we implemented a plan, had a timeline. And within all this time, I was just.
But that's what you got to do. Don't tell me you can't get rid of bad teachers. You can if you want to. Now, is it work? Yeah. But you got to do it.
Yeah.
You've got to do it. Now, along those lines, you really need performance data as well, because that kind of is the clincher, is when you have that performance data, that EVOS data. Now, Sandy, you're in South Carolina. You got those SLOs, student learning outcomes. You look at those, and if kids aren't growing, it's not about proficiency. That's who you get. Remember, we've talked gross about what you do with them. You have to be very clear that you're not taking this job action because of the level of the kids, but that they're not growing. Teachers can't help the level of the kids they get, but they can you can grow any of them. And that's the notion here. But yes, you must have your documentation. And again, I don't care if you call it a walkthrough or a look-in or a fidelity check or whatever it is. For some reason, we think if it's not a formal observation, we don't have to write it up. If you're going to use it in a job action, you better have written it up. Now, we talked about the difference in checklist, scripting, and coding. All right, so let's talk about that briefly. Everybody knows what scripting is. That's when you write down what happened. Everybody knows what checklist is. Most everybody uses those for walkthroughs. You check whether you saw it or whether you didn't. Now, coding. We use coding a lot in dissertations for qualitative work. There's two types of coding. There's inductive and deductive. This is relevant to your dissertation, so y'all pay attention to this part. I personally, with my students, I don't do deductive coding. I do inductive coding. Now, you say, well, Dale, what's that mean? What's that do with the process? When you do inductive coding, we take the transcripts of the interviews or the focus groups, we feed them into in vivo. It finds the themes and then gives us direct quotes that support those themes. That's called inductive coding. Deductive coding is you pick the themes first, like the 5 major themes that you found from your lit review, and then you try to find quotes that support your themes. The difference is you pick the themes. We're sure that the quotes, only a nitwit can't find quotes that supports their themes, but sometimes I have a problem with that, because only a nitwit wouldn't find their own themes. But if you put it in the computer, it's on the up and up. If the themes aren't there from your literature, it won't be found. Now, when you do coded walkthroughs or coded observations, the whole idea is to pick 3, 4, no more than 5, I would say 4, things specifically that you are looking for. And then you code the supporting evidence that you saw for those things or that you didn't see for those things. There is a purpose in coding. There is a purpose in coding, that you're looking for certain themes. You're looking for certain themes, and coding is the way you get it. You're not looking for codes, you're looking for themes. Coding is how you find the themes that you are looking for. Now, we don't do that a lot in observations anymore. That's a lost art, unfortunately. I liked it. Basically, you're taking shorthand notes is what you're doing when you're doing deductive coding. Here are the things I'm looking for. I told you to work on this. This was in your action plan. We gave you 3 things to work on. We're going to write those 3 things at the top of the page, and we're going to list everything that we saw in there that support these things, these themes that we want to see. That would be deductive coding. That's how you would go about that. I really like that for people who are on action plans, and we've given them a small number of specific things that we want them to work on. I really like coding for that. I think that adds so much more power to your data. You're not just all over the place. We told you we want you to work on this. When we come, we're going to be looking for these 2, 3, 4 things when we come. We're going to put them on the sheet. We're going to find things that support that or don't support that. I think that's a much better data collection method. You may disagree. But I think when you've got somebody on a specific plan, you ought to be doing coding. I think it's really helpful. Now, my story about the 2 teachers. So my story is a little bit different. It was a teacher and teacher assistant, but same thing. They'd been sniping back and forth at one another forever. And so finally, James, the principal, calls them in. I'm trying to remember where this was. I remember, but I better not say.
I think it was me.
No, it was in Charlotte. Oh. And I remember the principal, and I hate to speak ill of the dead because he passed not long after this happened. But he brought the teachers and teacher assistant in, and he said, "All right, we're going to settle this between the 2 of you." And so he let the teacher go first, and she, proceeded about 10 or 15 minutes worth of what a worthless human being the teacher assistant was. And then as soon as, and she finally blew it, and then the teacher assistant, he said, "All right, you tell me what's wrong with her." And before she could, first thing she said, the teacher jumped up and slapped her and knocked her just right out of her chair, right out on the floor. this is not 603, my law class. The fallout from that is the principal didn't report it and we had to fire him. You can't witness an assault and not call your school resource officer. But now, so that's the legal side of it, but that's not really what, if I was teaching 603, we'd spend an hour on that. But reporting laws, and I'd show you where in the law it says you have to do all those things. But what the important part for us, just like in Pauline's story, I would not call the two feuding parties in and put them together in the same place. I don't know that that's a good idea. I don't know that one might jump up and slap the other one. But for some reason, we have this notion that if we bring them together in the principal's office, that they're, that you have a magic wand, you have power, and their problems will go away. I don't think that's a good idea. Now, I don't know that I know what the best idea is. I know that one doesn't work a lot. It might work. And I've tried to think since I read that from Pauline, and I was reminded of that situation that we had at that school, where the teacher assistant left that meeting and went straight to the magistrate's office and filed a assault report. And then we had an assault report with nothing reported at the school. And then the principal tried to cover it up and ended up losing his job over it. But I'm going to call on Lauren specifically on this one. Lauren, if you had a teacher, an assistant, and a teacher, or two teachers that were feuding like this, part of the problem with the teacher and teacher assistants is the power imbalance. But if you've got two people that have to work together, what might be and you might tell me bringing them together in your office might be the way to do it. But you'd have what might be an alternative to that, though? I just think about you and your situation.
Yeah, I would probably meet with them individually and hear them out. If it's not something that I can solve, I mean, I would reach out to my HR department.
Yay!
And I would get the district involved. Like I'm not going to put myself in that situation.
I love you. Thank you so much. Yeah. You got me off the hook there.
Yeah.
This is an HR course, folks. We have employee assistants. We have HR for a reason. That's one of the things that they do. I would not get them together. I would talk to them individually, and if I saw that it was a problem enough that they might become physical or violent, I would go straight to HR. I would not put them together in the same room. Thank you so much for playing along. But she's exactly right. We think we have this ultimate power as principals, and that's what James thought he had, that he could just bring it in and his magnificence, his grace, his wonderfulness would just solve the problem. No, one just knocked the other one, just knocked her right out on the floor. That's the risk that you run when you try to pull something like that. That's completely against personnel policy. You would talk to them individually. And then if it was something that you felt was deeper than just you talking to them, and most of the time it will be, you need to refer them to employee assistants or your HR, whichever you have, whichever path that is. You need to pick up the phone and call HR. Again, like Snoop said, if you don't know, you better ask somebody. I'd call HR and run it through them. But I would not put them in the same room together in arm's reach of one another. You're just asking for trouble.
And Dr. Lamb, I think that sometimes too, we have to also walk a very careful line, even when it comes to HR, and that HR is not asking us to handle things that they should, that they should be the decision makers on. You have to, and I was put in that predicament today, and it's just like you're out of the school, you see something has occurred with two staff people. Yes, I'm the director, but by golly, you got the HR person over there, you got the assistant superintendent over there, and they refuse to make a decision. They called me to start asking me questions about CPI before they made a decision of what to do with these staff members. and I didn't witness the incident.
Right.
And frankly, they should have been calling Shaquetta Loretta, who does the CPI training for the district,
Yeah.
but they called me and start giving me like, hey, this person did this person did that. And I'm just like, oh my God, like what in the world is going on here? And to me to have to put and I have to explain, they said, so does, even if the kid is in elementary school, does CPI apply? I said, what? Yes. It doesn't matter. I mean, the kid was in elementary school. It doesn't matter. It's a student in the public school system. And you have to be able to use those restraints appropriately.
Exactly. You can't choke them out.
Right. You have to be. And I just felt that, thinking about that situation was, you put me in a predicament to call on me to help you make a decision about what you're going to do with two staff members, or at least one of them, who obviously did an inappropriate restraint
Yeah.
on a elementary school student. And just processing that after the fact, and I did have a little talk with the superintendent about it, but my
Well,
thing was,
that's see now that there you go. Now, do as I say, not as I did. What I would say, and I have on more than one occasion, was when I got those kind of calls, I would say to that person, remind me again why I need you. If I'm going to have to do this, why do I need you? I'm just going to call the superintendent. I don't need you. And now after I'm not telling you to do that, but I tell you, after I did that one time and the word got out, I didn't have any more of those people not handling their business on my watch. Now,
yeah.
but now, were we going to be in church together on Sunday at the golf course on Saturday? Were we going to be at one another's Christmas parties? No, that wasn't my point, though. I wasn't trying to be their friend. We hired you to do your job. Let me do mine. But, it doesn't take but one time when you make that call to the superintendent that quits. But if you'll let them, they'll put it all on you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. And that's my thing. Thinking about it after the fact, these are, two employees, at least I know one of them that actually put their hands on a child.
Yep.
I wasn't there, and I don't go out and do investigations.
That's what I mean. That's beyond your scope. That's not you. We have people that do that. They've got to do that. They've got to do that. And so, but again, if you will do it for them, I told you, a lot of people, and I tell you who are the worst is area superintendents. Why do I hate them so? That want you to sacrifice your career to protect theirs. It's like, well, that's what your job. You're supposed to protect me and my career and my aspirations. It's okay for you, for you to lose yours as long as I'm protected. Too many people who go to the central office have that perspective that people out in the schools work for them, not understanding if it weren't for the schools, we wouldn't have central offices. You're there to support the people out in the schools, not use them or shift the blame and the responsibility to them. Now, I'll be quiet. Boy, I got to be careful not spraying the shoulder, patting myself on the back here. I was maddened when I was in the central office that we would not do that to schools. Absolutely not. We'd handle our business. For good or for bad, we'd handle our business. But we couldn't ever forget our core competencies teaching kids. That happens out in the building. We don't have any kids over here in Stonewall Plaza or at the Ed Center. The Ed Center or the Auxiliary Ed Center in Charlotte. We had two downtown. We didn't have a kid in either one of them. That wasn't the purpose. We didn't have school for us to have a job here. We got to handle our business in the central office. Now, again, I was in mainline administration. We had the area offices that acted like little warlords and, fought among themselves and did all that. But I never was in one of those. I was always in mainline administration, and that's why I despise the area offices so much. They were the absolute worst at trying to dump everything that had any liability or responsibility back on the people in schools. I don't know why in the world we had them. They were awful. They were absolutely awful. In terms of how they treated the people in schools, as if they worked for them, like they were second-class citizens. People in the schools are the first class. We're the second class in the central office. First-class people are in the school. That's where the kids are. That's where our core competency is. But if you'll let them, you have a lot of people in central office who think that schools exist for them to have a job and to advance their career, and that the central office is the important place. No, it's the least important place. And if it's an area office that goes, that's with that, it's even worse. Those places are just little viper pits. They're just little warlords everywhere. There is no exception. So that's a broad state. No, that's the purpose that they serve. And I don't know what the solution to it is, but that's the form that they all take, whether they're in Raleigh or in Charlotte. That's where the office is, the same as Greensboro. Now, full disclosure, there's, what is it, the fourth largest district in the state? All the area superintendents are former students or former proteges of mine. I trained them as APs, every one of them. And I love them all like they're my children. But again, they're area superintendents. That's in Winston. But again, it's just the setup. It's how that's organized. It's just not good. It's just not. But even if you don't have area offices, your human resources department is supposed to be there for you, to support you. And this notion of bad PR, it ain't about PR. It's about following the law. And so, I mean, I've had people, don't call the police, call it no. There's certain things, and the law is very clear in 288, 115C 288. Certain things you call the superintendent or the designee first. Other things, it says clearly, call law enforcement, then the superintendent. And they'll get on you about calling the law first. We could handle that in-house. There is no such thing as handling things like this in-house. That just means cover up. That's code for cover up. We could have covered that up. No, we don't cover up. We don't handle things in-house because I'm telling you, it'll get out. The news will beat you home. It's always a cover up that gets you. It's always the cover up. Oh, we don't want you reporting this stuff. No, I'm following the law, especially on the Title IX stuff. Well, it was just, claims of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment's against the law. I called the law. But we don't know yet. But I'm not qualified to do investigations of a sexual nature. So I'm calling the law, just like the law says. Everybody that gets a check at the school now is a responsible person. Until 2021, it was called persons responsible. Now it's called responsible person. People ask me all the time, what's the difference in that? Just word order. No. Persons responsible, there was designees on your campus that were to make reports. Since 2001, the change in Title IX, everybody that gets a check is a responsible person and has to tell it if they witness it or a student tells them. And it goes straight to law enforcement. It does not go through several different hands. And, we don't start an investigation of our own or any of that stuff. No, we bring the police in first. And then they may tell us to handle it. But that's their option. The law is very clear. So a lot of these things, in the case that you're talking about, Karis, that's a violation of law. Improper use of seclusion or restraint is a violation of the law. You should not be involved in that at all. That is not you. That's law enforcement, folks. What they're trying to do is avoid reporting it to law enforcement. Now, you have to report those separately to DPI as well, because they are violations of the law. You have to report seclusions and restraints, unlawful seclusions and restraints, to law enforcement. See, that's
yeah.
that's what was going on there. Is they're trying to avoid doing that. I'll just tell you. I don't even have to know. I did this for so long, and now, full disclosure, every dirty trick known to man I know, because I probably did it at some point. I told you, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm gonna have to roll under the gate of heaven, just like Indiana Jones rolled under that gate in that movie. I'm trying to get smaller so I can get under that gate, but I'm telling you, I've done it all. And so I can tell you exactly the whole point of that, Cars, today was to try to avoid reporting it to law enforcement, because you are to report to law enforcement unlawful seclusions and restraints. You have to report them separately to DPI, but you also have to report them to law enforcement. But guess what? That gets the news media picks that up, and it's on the 6 o'clock news out of Fayetteville. Guy choked the kid out over in the elementary school today, and they'll have 2 or 3 parents standing out on the street in front of the school because we won't let the cameras on campus, telling it how they knew it all and giving their opinion. And they always pick the dumbest ones, I guess. It's kind of like when somebody sees a weird, methane over a hog pen in Arkansas, they always get the toothless one that gets on TV and claims it's a UFO. Well, that's them parents that get on TV out in front of school. And so that's what we're talking about here. The whole idea is, how do we avoid reporting this to law enforcement? You don't. That's the quick and easy answer. You don't. You had somebody did something inappropriate to a kid. The law says you report it, then you report it. You don't run it around, talk about it, discuss it, figure out how can we figure out a way not to. That's pretty simple. You don't want to be a part of the cover-up, folks. I'm telling you, because that's when you get got, and that's when you get fed into the jaws of the machine. You become grist for the mill, fodder for the cannon.
Well,
the higher-ups will sacrifice you.
No, what I stuck straight to policy, which I told them, in CPR training, we do nonviolent. We try to de-escalate first. We use the verbal. I reiterated to them that I was not there. I did not see anything, but I could go over CPR, the policies and what should be done.
Yeah.
In that, I said, unless that kid was in imminent danger to themselves or to others, and based on what they described to me, only what they described to me, and I still put it back to, unless the kid was a danger to themselves or to others. That's the only time we go to the extent to have done a full physical restraint that was told to me that was done on, I don't know, a kindergarten or first grader.
And that part of them, but they were told the same thing. They're looking for an out, not to have to report this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be that out. That's what I'm telling you. You don't sacrifice your career for the person in charge of that. And that's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to step up and say, that was okay, or it didn't happen, or your interpretation or whatever, so that they can not report it. And then if the parent goes to the magistrate and files assault charges and it comes rolling back down the hill, guess who they all point to? That would be you. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, that within 90 days, the teacher assistant that got slapped out of her chair, or the parent of a child who got restrained, within 90 days can go to the local magistrate and file charges. And if there's no report of that at the school, and then they say, well, Cara said it was okay. She said nothing to see here. That is correct. That's how that works. The reason why we tell the police is that doesn't make people guilty, but they come in and conduct an investigation and have a finding. Now, again, they work on probable cause, but they'll come in and investigate, and they'll say, yeah, an assault occurred, or no, it didn't. No harm, no foul. But the whole idea here is to avoid the public relations nightmare of the investigation. We want somebody to stand up and say, well, what they did was okay. What they did was okay. I'm a bad person. I pulled every dirty trick in the book. I know them all, unfortunately. It's just like, top 10 ways to cheat with data. I tell students all the time, I'm not teaching you these so that you'll use them. I'm teaching them so you'll know when they're being done to you. That's my advice tonight. I'm not telling you these bad things so that you'll do it, but you'll know when somebody's trying to do it to you. They're throwing you in. You're grist for the mill rather than them. Don't follow the law always. And the people in the central office do not do their work for them. That's why they're there. They need to do their own work. All right. Let's look at our schedule. I'm really pleased with the work that you're doing. I read all your stuff. Again, Pauline, I really appreciate your interview because it gave us some things that I wanted to talk about this week. I got to slip some lessons in here because y'all going to use up all my time Saturday. I know, because y'all got y'all's presentations to do, because we talked about dissertations and we're going to talk about qualtrics. And so I don't know, we don't have a lot of content for the middle of the week. We've covered most of it through our chapters. So let me share my screen and let's look at our schedule. And then we'll look at our lineup for the evening. All right. So for our schedule, obviously we're meeting this week, the 26th. This will conclude the Glickman chapters. And no, this won't conclude the Glickman. That concludes them, I mean, before we get to our meeting. So next Saturday, a week from this Saturday, we will be in Goldsboro. As I said, I got my room tonight, so I will be there. We'll start out with some general things as we normally do. And then those of you who didn't get to do your presentations that last Sunday so we could get on time, you'll do yours. And then I also want to do, let me look and see. I had it pulled up. Let me go back here. I've got a couple of things that I want to go over, but I've also, on our second Saturday, to support dissertations, I'm going to do qualtrics. And so we've got some of these things. These won't take a lot to talk about that. So y'all will do your presentations. We'll cover these quickly, but we'll spend Saturday afternoon, we'll do qualtrics. That's the survey instrument that we use. It also does our descriptive statistics for us. Now, y'all haven't had 736. Y'all go to that next semester. Within 736, half of the course is quantitative. That's numbers. Half is qualitative. That's interviews, observations, documents. You have quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative has two families of quantitative data. You have descriptive statistics and you have inferential statistics. We mostly use descriptive, just describe things. The beauty of Qualtrics as a survey tool is it collects our descriptive statistics and graphs them and compiles them for us on our multiple choice surveys. And then if we do open-ended in them, I can take and run them through in vivo and do inductive coding to find our themes with quotes. So Qualtrics is a wonderful tool. There's just some rules for how to use it. It's not hard. You have a free account already. Let me show you where that is. So you can go ahead and look at it. You can play with it. You won't hurt a thing. So when you go to Web Connect, in Launchpad, where you find email and Blackboard, you will see Qualtrics first-time users. You can sign in there, and then when you go in, next time you just sign in, and this is how we build surveys. Now it looks a little more daunting than it actually is. It's not that hard, but I want to show you how to go in. If it'll load tonight, it's a little slow. And you can actually spend some time playing before we get there. So if you see up the top left of the screen where it says XM right here, right next to it, there's hashtags. That's your main menu. That's the hardest thing to find is the menu. Go to projects. create a project. I've got 523 active going right now with doctoral students. I need to get me somebody. One of y'all needs to learn how to do Qualtrics and help me. Create project and just tell it you want to do a survey. Get started. Title it. And then you can do it. And there it is. And you can do all kinds of things. You can do multiple choice. You can do text, text graphic, matrix, slider, form field, rank order, side by side, net promoter, timing, graphic slider, constant sum, file. Boy, you can just do all kinds of wonderful things. You will use multiple choice and text. You don't need to try to show how smart you are doing this. You're trying to collect data, doing your dissertation. We mostly use these two. But the number, the orientation, we can change. See, this is vertical. We can change that to we can change the number of choices. We can change from vertical to horizontal, that kind of stuff. And that all means something, by the way. And I'll teach you that later. If you're doing demographic data, then it should be horizontal. I mean, it should be vertical. If you're doing data, it should be horizontal so that we can sort. They have to be stacked like this, vertical, if we're going to sort. Like if we're going to find out what gender they are in your survey, male and female, or years of experience, and we've got different categories that have to be this direction to sort so that we can run and compare the different groups that you have. That's just some things, but you can play with this. You can't publish it, so you can't hurt anything. This is what we're going to cover. I have notes and I have videos that go with it. That's how we're going to spend our time on that one to support your dissertation. But so the next time we're together, we're going to do presentations. You'll finish all the presentations that we didn't do last Sunday, and then I'll do Qualtrics. And then this Sunday, we'll try to get to our stuff. So I'll do that. And if you have dissertation questions, we can get to those too. So again, share my screen for tonight. It looks like tonight, it says we have Sandy, Loretta, and Paula. Is that right? Zoom 3, doing those chapters tonight. All right, Sandy, you have the floor. You can now share your screen and educate us. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Okay, so I had chapters 10, 11, and 12 in Glickman. And chapter 10 was on non-directive behaviors and non-directive supervision. This is the fourth approach to supervision, and Shaquetta did the other three. So this is the last one. This is only used in certain situations. It's typically used when teachers being supervised have some knowledge of the instructional changes that are needed, and they have the ability to apply the guidance that is being provided. And then the school leader's role is to guide the teacher's thinking process for the decision-making needed in instruction. So they focus on assisting the teacher with the process of observation and interpretation and problem identification, all of that. But the decisions made and the improvement plan belong to the teachers. With this style, there are certain teachers that would be best matched and would result in the better outcome. When considering each of these areas, the best matched teachers would be highly reflective. They would cope well with stress and demonstrate altruistic behaviors. They would be culturally responsive problem solvers that value student perspectives and interpret rules in light of the situation based on the impact of those involved. With decision-making, they gather as much information as possible, consider the possible causes, and take full responsibility for decisions made. These teachers will identify needs in the system and are genuinely concerned for others. And you can find them in your building because they are leaders among the teachers, and they are reflective, and they assess all the available information. These teachers are experienced, and their classrooms are engaging and challenging, but also supportive.
All right, go back to that one. Let me ask. Okay. Thinking about the old Hershey and Blanchard situational leadership, which talks about the application of task and relationship behaviors. Where would this, what kind of supervision does this kind of teacher need in terms of task and relationship? Do they need a lot of tasks? Do you need to tell them what to do a lot? That's the whole idea of being non-directive.
Right.
This is what we would refer to as low task or non-directive. So in the school business, we think of it more as task and relationship to relate this. So these people don't need a lot of tasks telling them what to do. They know what to do. As Sandy just said, you heard that, they're your teacher leaders. You don't have to tell them what to do. They're low in task, but you can be low in task behaviors with them. Now, that was the easy stuff. Here's the hard question now. What do these people need in relationship behaviors?
I would say they just need guidance. They need a sounding board.
All right. If they are truly non-directive, they don't need relationship behaviors either. They're self-motivated. They're intrinsically motivated. They're there for their kids and their classroom. They're true professionals. You don't need to tell them what to do. You don't have to go and hold their hand and love on them every day or two either. If they're truly non-directive. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't give them an attaboy every now and then, those relationship behaviors, but they don't need it. And if you do that, here's where I'm headed with this. If they're truly non-directive, if you do too much of that relationship stuff, that will drive them away. As crazy as that sounds. Because what do they think if you're doing that? They think that you don't trust them, or that they're not a professional, or that they're not a leader. They recognize those attaboys, and it's almost insulting that they would think that would matter to them. Truly non-directive people don't need task or relationship behaviors. They just need for somebody to get out of their way and leave them alone. Now, I'm not saying you have a lot of those, but if you have some of those, the worst thing that you can do is A, micromanage them, or B, do too much of the recognition, the relationship kind of stuff. Leave them alone. Get out of their way. Now, we would like for all teachers to eventually become this, our teacher leaders. But you can hinder it along the way by trying to be in charge. Trying to be in charge. These people don't need somebody to be in charge of them. This is when you need to understand one of the first leadership, the hardest one to learn in leadership. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Sometimes the best thing to do is not to do. Not in every situation, but this is the one time when not doing something is better than doing anything. All right, thank you for that, Sandy. I just wanted to make that point.
So if you look at the continuum, it's easy to see the process is very teacher-focused, teacher-driven. The majority of the time is spent in those first stages, and the leader is just listening and understanding and trying to clarify, reflect, maybe encourage, but this is really only when there's a problem. And the process begins with listening for the school leader and asking the teachers to present the decision at the end. There can be some confusion with non-directive supervision and laissez-faire leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think they're the same, but with laissez-faire leadership, that usually advocates minimal supervisor involvement with the decision process, and non-directive supervision involves the supervisor from the beginning, where they may not be interjecting their opinions or manipulating the decision that's made, but they do things like clarifying and reflecting and just helping the teacher move through the problem-solving process. So another issue is that the school leader must remain non-judgmental in relation to the teacher's ideas and commit to not offering any suggestions. That's one of the harder things to master, as we just talked about.
Yeah, not to engage in task behavior, tell them what to do.
Yes. And then teachers will sometimes, you'll have a teacher that might just be reluctant to speak in situations, and the school leader must force themselves to be patient and persistent with just letting the teacher make the decision. There are times when a supervisor might assume that the teacher's more capable than they actually are, and once the process begins, it becomes apparent they are not capable of doing this type of approach with leadership and problem solving, and the administrator should probably change their approach and use one of those 3 options we talked about last time.
Yes. Again, there's not going to be a lot of these. And Sandy let the cat out of the bag early. These are your teacher leaders. There's not a lot of them.
Right.
And the notion of laissez-faire is how you treat everybody. You just don't care. You let them do whatever they want. These people, you truly have to let them do what they want. There's not many of them. I'm trying to think back at some of my principalships. I was a middle school principal one time. Hell is real. Better repent and get right with the Lord. Hell is real. I was a middle school principal. I had one of these. I had one. She was the gifted teacher. I had one, Abby Hogan. Now, in their defense, we hadn't gotten to accountability yet. This was in the 80s, before accountability. Teachers just came in and did their lessons. They weren't professionals. They weren't leaders. They just came in and did their job. They weren't held accountable. She was the only one in the building who really assessed her kids and was accountable for their learning, because the parents of the gifted kids demanded it. And that suited her personality. She was A type, and she wanted her kids to be the best and learn, and she was the best, and she was a great teacher. Great. I had one. Now, I had some other locations when I got out of the woods, when we got, to the paved roads and running water and indoor plumbing. When I worked in the uptown districts, we had a lot of these, but you won't have, your building will not be full of these people. But you would like to get all of your folks here, but you won't keep them if you don't recognize when they get here that it's got to be hands off. You got to leave them alone. But the flip side of that is thinking they're there and they're not. That's bullet 4 here. But this is what you want. This is the holy grail of teachers in your building, is this. Please proceed.
So I think we've talked a little bit about this already, but when to use non-directive behaviors is when your teacher is functioning at a higher level. And also when the teacher might have more knowledge and expertise than you do.
Yeah.
If the supervisor doesn't know anything about it and the teacher does, the teacher should probably solve the problem. Another situation that requires this approach is when the teacher will be required to complete the tasks and will ultimately be responsible for the results. And then this last one I thought was interesting. There's situations when the teacher is overall more committed to solving the problem. The teacher sees that there's an issue, but the school leader doesn't actually care or doesn't see it as a concern, then the teacher should solve the problem.
That's what I mean. That's why it's hard to be hands off. because, we're LS people, we're problem solvers. That's one of the things that gets us in trouble with these kinds of teachers, though, is we want to fix all their problems, or they have problems and we don't see it as a problem, and that can be troublesome as well.
So then the book did have this reflection activity. It said, critique the behaviors of a supervisor who believes that they use non-directive behaviors. And then if you can think of one, then how did those teachers respond to that supervisor's efforts to use non-directive behaviors? If anyone can think of someone.
I think it depends. Like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I think it basically depends on like whether it's a new teacher or like a veteran teacher. And basically, like if they're okay with listening. That's a hard one.
Well, in this case, non-directive behavior pretty much means you're not doing task behaviors with them. You're not doing relationship. You're just letting them come to the room and be on their own. You just support them and get them what they need. But this is the old school style where you give them their room assignment, give them the key, and give them a hail and hearty handshake and a slap on the back and say, "Go get them." You're not there good or bad. You don't do task or relationship behaviors with them. You just assume that they're going to go do the right thing.
Like,
again, true non-directive teachers with this skill set, that's what they want. They want to be left alone. I talked with a friend of mine yesterday. I called him yesterday. And we shared a joke. And then I asked him how he was doing. And he said, I'm having the best time. I think I'm having the best time I've ever had in the business. And so here's his deal. He retired from Gardner Webb. He went back to the classroom, went across the line to South Carolina, got all of his North Carolina time and got all his degrees. He's made good money, but he went last year. He was teaching high school English in Gaffney, and he felt like he was being micromanaged. So he left and he went to Blacksburg, which is only 7 miles away. And you know why he's having the time of his life? Now, he's a master teacher. There's no doubt. Because nobody's bothering him. Nobody comes to his room. Nobody, and he knows what to do with his kids. And he's truly, and he said, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my job. Yeah. But now, he's an avowed expert in his field, though. There's nobody in the building at Blacksburg that knows 1/10 about his subject matter as he does. And so they just leave him alone. The people in Gaffney weren't smart enough to do that. But the people in Blacksburg are. And it's not because they're incompetent or lazy or whatever. They know that they've got him, and that that they don't know as much as him, and he's the expert. So why are you over there bothering that man? Get out of his way and let him work. Again, you don't have a lot of them. But now, if it's not in that case, if that person is not happy with that completely hands-off approach, then they're not there. You need to do something different. There's nothing wrong with them. It's your supervision style. But again, you should find out if they're okay with it. We hired, not we, I'm make sure, but when I was a high school teacher, the principal hired this lady who was coming back to the area, going to finish out her last, she had her time in, but she was going to do a few years back at home. She was taking care of her parents now. Her name is Lucy Daniel. She was she was the Science Teacher of the Year in the United States of America. She got the year sabbatical, traveled all over the world. And unfortunately for her and for all of us, the principal got promoted right the first week of school, and we got a new principal in, and he was the village idiot. And he tried to micromanage the National Science Teacher of the Year, and she promptly retired. That's what we're talking about. You know, all you got to do is just don't mess it up. We don't need you to do anything else. Just don't mess it up. But he couldn't do that. His ego wouldn't let him do that. She was the National Science Teacher of the Year. And he couldn't, but he couldn't leave it alone. This one is hard. Oh. It's hard to get it right, and it's hard to let it go when it is right, and not want to interject either task or relationship behaviors. But truly, if you've got some of these people and you'd love to get all your people here, you got to check your ego at the door, and you just got to walk away from these people. Very good.
Dr. Lamb?
Yes.
How would you be able to determine if the person is like, he wants to be left alone or they need that help?
Outcomes, evaluations, walkthroughs, personality check, and just talking to them. What do you need from me? Now, when you go in the room and you see that they're a master teacher, that's the first check. No task relationship, no task behaviors. They got this. You should be able to determine that in no more than 4 to 6 weeks. You should be able to determine that they're the real deal teaching, that they don't need any of those tasks, what we're calling directive control, directive informational, collaborative, all these different ones. It's basically task and relationship, though. I'm kind of summarizing it for you. It makes it a little bit easier. You either apply task behaviors, I need for you to do this, this, and this, or relationship behaviors, where you're bonding, talking, sharing, collaborating, that kind of thing. And so the first part is task. If they've got their task, they don't need you. They know what they're doing. They know how to teach. They don't need you. Then the second part of it is, do they want or need relationship behaviors? Do they need for you to recognize them? Do they need to be the teacher of the week? Do they need the golden apple, the crystal apple or the ruler or whatever that Horace Mann gives out? Do they need to be rewarded? Do they need to be recognized? Do they need for you to come and speak to them every day? Those are relationship behaviors. And so, as you can see, they've kind of got task and relationship behaviors separated into direct control, direct informational approach. Those are task behaviors. Collaborative, non-directive approach. Those are kind of relationship behaviors. I'm summarizing it for you. This is the deep dive into it. But on an operational level, without having to pull your chart out, we just talk about applying varying levels of task and relationship behaviors. This is from Situational Leadership, Hershey and Blanchard. It's more of a administrative approach to supervision for people who don't do it all day, every day. You're not C&I people. You don't do this all day, every day. From a leadership perspective, it kind of summarizes, do they need to be told what to do? That's task. Or do they need a relationship? That's relationship. Do they need collaboration? Do they need non-direct? Do they need rewards? Do they need to be recognized? Those kinds of things. That's what these two things mean. You got 2 and 2 on the screen now. But from an administrative point of view, we can't spend as much time with these people as we could if we were simply doing curriculum, and that's all we did every day, all day, with supervision of teachers. Let's see. Let me look right quick. I have to pick on her. There's Lauren. Lauren, how much time do you have every day to do supervision of instruction? On percentage-wise, on a weekly or monthly basis, what percentage of your day would you say would be the appropriate amount to be spent on supervision of instruction?
Not nearly what I want it to be.
But what is the appropriate amount?
Oh, I mean, appropriate amount, it should, I mean, gosh, I feel like that's my primary responsibility.
Well, I don't know
Is
why, but I've always advocated about 40% of your time.
yeah,
Should be-
yeah, I would say minimum.
Yeah, 40%. And and it goes up from there. But that's the baseline. My point is that's the baseline. But it can't be 100%. You're not a curriculum specialist, content, you're not a
Academic
instructional
coach.
specialist, or
Mhm.
you're not somebody on the curriculum side. You don't come to work every day to do this. About 40% of your day, if you're lucky, and if you get better at it over the years, you might get up to 60. Most of the principals that I've ever known or still know, they dream of 50-50. That's their dream, but realistically it's probably 40. I don't think you can get away with less than 40 and be an instructional leader.
Not overall. I mean, you'll have days
Yeah.
throughout, like days where you feel like you can never get into a classroom because the building's burning down, but
yeah, that's what
for
I
the
mean.
most part.
Yeah. So the whole notion here is this is a very detailed map. I equate this to, if I was doing this all day, every day, this would be what I would use. I would take the knowledge from this and I would kind of summarize it into task and relationship behaviors, a little simpler version. Now, y'all might be, y'all are a lot smarter than me. Y'all might be able to manage a matrix like this. I always just looked at it as task and relationship. And if that helps you, and you start at that and you would like to grow into this, is my point. I'm not saying that you start and stay where I am, task and relationship. I was an operations person. I could only barely spell instruction if you spotted me a couple of letters. But this is where you want to end up. But this is highly complex. This is time consuming. If you're in the 40, if you're in the new administrative range and you're at the 40%, you're looking mostly at task and relationship. You'd like to grow it into this, though. This is where you'd like to go. But my point on all this is, don't let this dissuade you. You got to start somewhere. Yes, this is difficult. Yes, this is complex. This is a lot. But if you boil it down and simplify it down to task and relationship and start there, you can expand it where eventually you can get to this. But starting as a new administrator and putting this in for every adult in your, every teacher, boy, this is a lot. It's a lot. It just is. And what happens is, a lot of times when you see a daunting task like that, you won't take the first step. But if you see it as just task and relationship behaviors, you'll get started in it. And as you grow in your ability to supervise instruction, you'll want a more complex system. Here it is. But you got to start somewhere. And it is a daunting task. Look at all those different levels. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 6. And you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, think about all the permutations here of these columns and rows. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts here, and a lot of stuff inside of these. This is a complex system. This is not for neophytes. This is hard for beginners. I'm telling you right now, this is hard for beginners. But I'm telling you, don't get discouraged. You can get here. I'm not saying don't try to get here, but if you can start with task and relationship, you can get here. And this is where you'd like to be. But you're not going to get here doing 20% of your time on instruction. It's going to take at least 40 to 50% to get to this kind of matrix level, because it takes a lot of time. Thank you, Sandy.
That was a good bit of what they talked about when they talked about this chart. They said if you had a teacher that fit perfectly, then yes, you could pick the perfect approach. But No one's going to line up perfectly in this chart.
Right.
It's a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
So the best way to choose the best approach is just to try and learn about the different approaches, to consider all the factors, look at that teacher's work experience, observe that teacher, have some conversations, and then also listen to feedback from the people you are supervising.
Right.
And monitor what you're doing and adjust.
Yep.
So it's important. This is a lot more about the adjusting part of it, but you have to use different approaches with different teachers and different groups of teachers. And this can be done, but only if the school leader is functioning at a higher level of development and expertise. When the supervisor is uncertain of whether or not the chosen approach is the best fit, a good rule of thumb is just to go back to the collaborative approach and work from there. Either go more directive or more non-directive, depending on how the teacher responds.
Collaborative is a relationship behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You know, don't tell them, if you're not sure, don't tell them to do things, because that and it goes bad. That's not good. If you're unsure, go collaborative, which is a relationship behavior until you can figure out what task you want to have them do. That's always a good fail safe right there. Excellent.
And you want to foster teacher development, so you want your teachers functioning as high as possible because you want your students functioning as high as possible. Mm-hmm. So you're slowly moving toward that non-directive no matter what. And that means that you might not be always the one that's doing the supervision. Like you may link teachers with other teachers through mentoring or role playing and teachers observing teachers, all of those examples. But ultimately, there's really no algorithm for the best supervisory approach.
I love that last sentence there, folks. That's what we're talking about. There's no, you have to work and build. First, you got to build more time. You've got to find more time in your daily schedule for supervision and instruction. You can't do it at 20% and doing 80% operations, and which is disciplines on the operation side. And there's no just here it is. It's written down for me. I'll go do it. That's what I was talking about. You saw that last chart that Sandy put up. There's 30 different permutations there, 30 different ones. That's what we're talking about. There's so many different things, so many different moving parts. There is no one way, and there's so many different permutations of that. A variant of a multiple of 30 that start with task and relationship. Then work to the 4. That's 2 and 2 tasks, 2, directive, collaborative. Again, your fail safe is it's always safe to do relationship. Don't tell something, don't tell somebody to do something just so they'll be doing something. That's not good. It's better to tell them to do nothing than have them do something that's wrong. So that's the whole notion there.
They did have a case study in the book. They actually had 4 case studies, but I just picked one.
Okay.
And it talked about Mr. Watson, and basically he's not teaching, and he's just giving worksheets, and he's sitting at the front of the room reading a magazine for most of the class period. And he's ready to retire because he only has 6 years left and he's done. And he didn't go to any of the trainings for the science curriculum or the hands-on science program, nothing. So he's just not working, basically. And this is the time when Miss Cazzero, the principal, steps in and says, you're going to do all of these things. And she gives him a plan and basically says, you're not going to do those things that were on that list. But then as Mr. Watson goes through, he realizes, and he's doing what Miss Cazzero says, he realizes these students can learn. And he decides that he probably would like that training that was offered by the school. So Ms. Cazzero meets with him and they talk about the training, and she decides, I'm going to give you the option of how you want to be trained. Is it going to be after school? Is it going to be 2 full days of in-service? Is it going to be with the familiar teacher down the hallway? And she kind of gives him a little bit of control with this portion because he is showing some effort. And he chooses the familiar teacher. But that was just an example of how she's backing off of the control part and moving him toward that non-directive. He's definitely not there yet, but just it's a slow process, I think is what the book's point was.
Yeah, and this is an example of using a task behavior and a relationship behavior. The task behavior is you got to go get trained. The relationship behavior is I'll let you choose how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is an example of those. Excellent.
So that ended that portion of the book, and then this is a new chapter in the next section. It's all about observation. And the first portion is about quantitative observations, and it talks about how that measures behaviors and events and frequency data. So that first one is categorical frequency instrument. These were just some examples they had in the book. And this is a form that's used during the observation that defines very specific events. So the definition is very specific. The observer knows exactly what to look for, and then they tally mark it. And then they can do statistical analysis with whatever numbers they come up with. So
all right.
They did percentage.
Thank you. All right. Now, these are what I was talking about earlier, examples of a checklist on the right and a coding system on the left. The coding, you see you've created the themes that you're looking for over here on the left, and you just tally. And then over here is the checklist, yes or no. Again, how many times we saw them. Again, that's coding. How many times did I see that? And then on the other one, the checklist is, again, you have your themes, but it's just, did I see it, yes or no? Again, the coding gives you more information than the checklist does, is what I was, and this is a wonderful graphic display of that. That would be the difference in these two. Very good.
And on that one on the right, they did point out that it's not a absolute thing. Like, yes, there is a yes and a no, and it does seem absolute, but there's always that comment section up there. So it's important to meet with the teacher after and figure out why maybe that didn't happen or why it did.
Mm-hmm.
And then visual diagramming, that's another way. You draw, you know what you're looking for, you try to draw what's happening in the room. So this person was trying to determine if the teacher was monitoring the entire classroom. But it looks like the teacher's physical presence is really in the front and on the left side of the classroom as opposed to the back and the middle. And then they went so far as to put in the times that teacher was there, so you know how long that teacher was spending in those different areas of the room. The next section is on qualitative observations, and you do a qualitative observation whenever you're not really sure what you might be looking for. So they gave a few examples verbatim, and selective verbatim, that is what it sounds like. She's writing exactly the exact speech that's happening in the classroom, and that looks at interpersonal relationships that's occurring in the room. And then the detached open-ended narrative, that one looks more at, it tells the story of exactly what's happening in the classroom. And whatever's significant and standing out to the observer is going to write that down. So it's not that you're writing every single thing down in the room, but you're writing down the things that are most significant.
Mm-hmm. These are two types of scripting. Y'all know that. Now, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a time when different districts adopted one of these two methods, and they taught you as administrators in your evaluation training whether to do the note taking on the top left or the narrative on the bottom right. This is notes on the top left. You're taking notes from what you gained. On the bottom right, you're writing a narrative. This is two examples of scripting. Now, I worked in districts where I worked in 4 different ones. And so the first one I worked in, we didn't even do this because we weren't doing evaluations left. I left in the 80s before we got to that. But in Charlotte, we did the narrative. In Burke, we did what we call note taking. But either way, this is scripting, where you're writing down something. Either you write down what you heard, notes, phrases, or you write a narrative. Again, this is dependent upon your district and what their requirement is. Again, very important when it comes time for a job action that you've been taking notes, you've been doing your scripting as approved by the district.
These are some other examples. Participant open-ended observation occurs when the supervisor becomes a functioning part of the classroom. That means they are helping with instruction, they're helping students, they're using the classroom materials, and they're slowly jotting down some notes on the side, and then once the observation is completed, they'll write it up in a more formal pattern. And then the one on the right is focused questionnaire observation, and that's when you want to know, are the students learning certain things based on the behaviors you're seeing in the classroom? So that one was specific to, I think, problem solving.
All right. Now, again, y'all can shout me down these are used more by people who do this all day, every day. Curriculum people. Administrators tend to do the two simpler ones on the front page on the scripting. This is next level stuff here. This is if you are a curriculum instruction specialist, if you're a coach, if you're a facilitator. This is deeper. This is much deeper, but you can see it's much more involved as well. This isn't hit and run stuff here, folks. Would we love to get to this? Yes, we would love for you as administrators to get to this. This would require 80% of your day being done on supervision of instruction, at least 80%. This is very deep. This is very heavy. For school administrators, I could be wrong unless things have changed fairly recently. I don't know anybody that requires this level of this depth of scripting from school principals. They're more the first two that you saw. So I was talking about this takes a while. This takes a minute when you go in the rooms, when you're doing those, when you're scripting, when you're doing the qualitative part in the room. We kind of, as I said, Bert, we just did the shorthand notes. In Charlotte, we wrote the narratives, but this is two more levels beyond that. This takes a lot of time.
The book did talk about tailored observation systems. It might be that none of those observations we just talked about work for what you want to find out about your classroom. A teacher might ask a school leader to do a specific observation, and they might want qualitative and quantitative data. So then they just figure it out. They piece something together and they say, this is going to be the observation form because these are the odd things I'm looking for in my classroom. And then there's also the school-wide classroom observation. And that's when every single classroom is observed in the exact same way. And they are looking, it's a needs assessment. They might be doing a needs assessment. They might be monitoring implementation, or they might just be looking for school-wide results.
Monitoring implementation, we talked about that one last night. Formative assessment. When you're trying to do formative and to look at an implementation, how well something's been implemented, we need everybody to implement with fidelity. And so we want everybody to use exactly the same form, as you know. And so you have to know that. But again, formative assessment is who's going to check to make sure it's happening with fidelity. And so if you're doing that, you want to use the same format with everybody. You can't really differentiate if you're trying to determine the status or the level of implementation. The instrument and how you use it has to be the same in every classroom. Understand that. Sometimes when you've implemented new programs, do it this way, do it now, do it this way kind of thing. You don't have a lot of discretion. And you have to make sure that everybody that's doing these understands that. We need to all do them the same way.
And the authors did point out that you need to know why you're going into the classroom, what you want to look for, and once you find that purpose, you work backwards to figure out the type of observation you need. And this was the chart they gave in the book.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking about earlier. Those themes that you're looking for, you definitely, if you've got somebody on an improvement or an action plan, you definitely need to know what you're looking for when you go in. So I said you definitely want to do the deductive coding where you already know the 3 or 4 things that you're looking for before you go. You know, most specifically, you'd like to do that anytime, but most specifically, if you've got somebody on an improvement or an action plan, you need to know what you're looking for before you go and already have those things down that you're looking for when you walk in.
And there are some trends in classroom observation. A lot of it involves recording, digital pens that will do audio recording. There's video recording. The telepresence robots, I thought that was interesting. The robot can focus in on certain aspects of the lesson, and teachers can observe the lesson from different locations without becoming a distraction for students in the classroom. That was interesting. And then the webcam and bug in ear, that's also, I don't know, I feel like that would be pretty distracting because you have a camera going in the room and the teacher has a device in her ear and she can hear what the observer is saying. I'm not sure that I would like that too much, but those were some of the things mentioned in the book. And they also talked about collaborative walkthroughs where you have a handful of teachers that are going into the room and they all have different things that they're looking for. So one might be looking for off-task behaviors and another one's looking for how well the lesson was presented. And then they all come together and meet and do a formal write-up of what was actually seen in the room that involves all the different perspectives. And just remember that with observations, students act differently when there's other adults in the room. Observers might respond differently because they have other experiences in the past. The observation instrument might not have been the right one. All of these things can just impact how the observation goes and what you actually find out. But overall, the observation should just be a starting point for a dialogue between the leader and the teacher.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's all.
To the last slide that Sandy had there, I worked in one of the 15 state pilot districts when we did the first attempt at differentiating levels of teachers in order to do paper performance. It was called the Career Development Pilot Program. And you had state assessors who came in and observed in the rooms, and you went in as principal. You had them come in. There was 2 different ones of them. Sometimes all 3 of you'd be in the room. And what I took from that is I could tell if a teacher was a optimist, a pessimist, or a realist based on how they interacted with their kids prior to us coming to the room. If the teacher was an optimist, they would promise their children a reward if they would behave themselves. When all this, this cabal of people came into the room, which is very disruptive. And then if the teacher was a pessimist, they would threaten kids with a punishment if they didn't behave when we came to the room. And if they were a realist, they'd do both. And so that's kind of the drawback on that system, as Sandy said. It has an experimenter or Hawthorne effect on the classroom. You have to understand that too. The more intrusive you are, the bigger that impact or that negative effect is on that classroom. All right, very good. All right, thank you. You can stop your share. Our next person. Squetta, you've got a question?
I was giving Sandra a clap.
You did a great job. Thank you.
So, I am responsible for chapters 13 and 14. That's is part 4 technical skills, and chapter 13 was on assessing and planning. So the first thing it talked about was some of the stuff that you guys talked about in chapter 11, I think it was, or 12, where you were asking Lauren about time spent, or how much time spent in instructional leadership or guiding teachers through instruction. And so this particular section was talking about assessing the principal or admin's personal needs assessment, where they would compare their ideal time that they wanted to spend on instructional leadership as opposed to the actual time that they were spending. And they would create a tally or chart, and for 5 to 10 consecutive days, they would see how much time they were spending on instruction. And then based on what they felt like they need to spend on instruction, based on their needs assessment, they would compare the time and then try to figure out a plan to whether they needed to delegate some of the responsibilities, or whether they want to prioritize so that they can spend more of their time in the classrooms for instruction, dealing with walkthroughs and observations and giving feedback. The next thing, or the next section, they were talking about school improvement and how to go about school improvements with a need assessment, then planning how to address those needs, then actually implementing those things that they wanted to put in place, and then evaluating. And then it's a cyclical process, because once you evaluate, then you decide whether you want to adjust, whether it's working and you want to continue on, or whether you want to terminate and try something different. So that was the little chart that they gave for that. And then they were talking about different ways to assess need in the schools. So you could do quantitative or qualitative assessing, where you can do where they say eyes and ears. They're talking about surveys, interviews, conferences, getting feedback from your stakeholders, parents, the students, the staff, the community. You could use or look at official records of historical data from the school. You can look at work samples and surveys. And then I guess one of the least used, or hopefully one of the least used, are bringing in a third impartial party to review the school. Some other ways analyzing your organizational needs was the cause and effect, but you had the fishbone. They call it fishbone because the head of the fish was like the problem statement. And then you have the 4 bigger bones out to the side, or how many other major causes you have in your particular school or district. And then the little small bones in there would tell what was influencing those major causes. And then you have your flow chart. That flow chart, to me, is sort of like our data decision rules, what we use in our district, how we make decisions based on different things that are happening in the school. And then you have the Pareto chart, where they have the horizontal is the cause, and then the vertical is the percent of impact of that cause. And then we had they talked about, or Glickman talked about, how your post-needs assessment planning is sort of like when you are cooking a recipe for a cake. So when you have to decide on what to cook, it's sort of like when you're trying to choose what objective you want to focus on. When you're prepping for the meal, and chopping things up is sort of like when you're defining your resources. We call that resource mapping in our district. And we use the ICE to figure out a plan for addressing those needs. And ICE stands for what kind of instruction are we using, what curriculum are we using, how are we going to, what environment is going to take place in, and what data evaluation tools are we going to use. So we use that as our ICE document. And then you cook it. So that's our implementation where we're implementing it in the district, and then you taste it or evaluate and judge whether it is working, whether it's not working, or where you can tweak it to make it work. So here are some other analyzing organizational needs. The affinity diagram is basically when you have a whole, you ask a question and you have different responses. You could have a whole bunch of responses if you could have all the teachers respond. And then sometimes it develops in different things, and you can just kind of cluster or group those different things so that you won't have like 100 and something different responses. You can cluster it maybe down to 5 or 6 different things that you can focus on, and then choose from your top ones from those 5 or 6 different things. Your progress decision program chart, to me, what we call this in our district, where you want to, we call it our standard treatment protocol. That's where you address, what if this doesn't work? What do you do then? So you pick out or brainstorm what things could happen or could go wrong, and then you kind of address those things in your standard treatment protocol. And then your Gantt chart is basically a timeline of how you're going to implement these things. Then we had a reflective question where it asked about this high school, this principal. She has a diverse group of students with a diverse group of staff members, and she wanted to know how to address or assess the school's climate as it is. And so she wanted to use a variety of assessments, and she wanted to know what variety would you use and who would you ask, or who would you use it on. So I said that you could use the eyes and ears approach, where you do interviews and where you do get feedback, and where you go through observations. And you can use that with the students, the staff, and the community members. You can do school-wide observations and collect quantitative and qualitative attendance, discipline data, the teacher working conditions survey, your FAMS data, your FAMD data, and your MTSS belief survey. All those will help you with school climate. And then you would do survey data from parents and students in the community for different stakeholders. So then that brought us to chapter 14, where we talked about implementation and evaluation skills. And they talked about that there were 5 stages of implementation. And those 5 stages were readiness, where you had different forms of teachers have different forms of readiness. And then there were the installation, where you have your materials, you have your teams that you put together that you're going to provide for implementation, or that's going to check fidelity, or that's going to train. You got your guidelines set up, your schedules, and you're tracking the plan. And then you have stage 3, which is initiation, where you have your people that are training in the skills. In some places, you would have a pilot. If it's in a school, you might have a pilot classroom if it's a new program, and you want to test to see if it's going to work, but you don't want to involve the whole school. You could have a pilot classroom, or you could have a pilot school if you're talking about district. And then you have your full operation, where it's the standard practice all over either the district or all over the school based on what you're trying to assess. And then stage 5 would be your continuation and renewal, where you base that on the data outcomes. Did the data say that your goals were met, or did it not? So you would choose this time at stage 5 to tell whether you're going to continue on for renewal or whether you're just going to terminate. And then we have some factors that affect implementation. There were 3 degrees of implementation. The first degree was paper implementation, where you just have, it's available on print. And then your second degree was process implementation, where they have the manuals and the coaching documents and everything set up for use. And then the last one is your performance, where you actually apply it to your school or your district for implementation. And then they were saying that the problem with most programs or initiatives that we put in schools is that they don't get past stage 1 and 2, or degree 1 and 2. We don't never get to the performance implementation. We just stop at 1 and 2, because we're not building the capacity of our teachers in the building to be able to maintain that process. I mean, that performance implementation.
This is formative assessment. Summative is of the outcome. Formative assessment is of the implementation. Are teachers doing this with fidelity like you want them to? So that may be because we only ever look at outcomes. We never get to that third stage. That is correct.
Right. And then for the then they talk about the implementation of the individual level. And the main thing about this is that different teachers reach different stages at different times based on their experience, based on their confidence in their abilities or their abilities themselves. So the different stages were stage 0 was just awareness. You're aware of it. You may be interested in it, but you have no knowledge of it. And then I went to stage 1, which was general awareness and interest. Stage 2 was uncertainty about your personal demands, how much time and effort is going to be put into it personally, how is it going to affect me, basically. And then stage 3 was management based on the information and the resources. Stage 4 was consequence. What is the impact it's going to have on my students? Stage 5 was collaboration, and that's how we're going to coordinate and cooperate with other departments or other grade levels or other curriculum content areas in the building. Stage 6 was refocusing and figuring out the possibilities for major change in our building, or if we needed to replace. Then we went on to talking about the intersection between instructional supervision and program evaluation. So in your instructional supervision is anything you are supervising that directly affects teaching and learning for students, which is our main goal in education. So those things would be any kind of curriculum, instructional programs, professional development, student assessment, and it should involve teachers, because the teachers are the ones that are implementing the plan. So there are two types of program evaluation that Dr. Lamb just mentioned. One was formative, and it's intended for improvement, or summative, and that's intended to judge the value of the program, whether it's working or whether it's not. When we talk about program evaluation and we're talking about building the capacity of teachers to be able to implement that program evaluation, then we talk about empowerment evaluations, what they term is EE, and that is supervising or teachers to be able to facilitate program evaluations. And in order for them to do that, we have to help them with the purpose, why they are doing it. We support them in how they're doing it, both technically by giving them coaching, mentoring, and staff development, and also morally through building up their confidence to be able to do it on their own. And then what they're doing, what is the process used in doing the evaluation. So then the last reflection question was asking to think about a school-wide instructional innovation and then talk about the different stages of that innovation. And the one that I was able to think about, one that a lot of people have been doing, or a lot of schools have been doing, is the instructional innovation would have been PBIS. And the first stage would have been having a PBIS overview with the schools. The second stage would be having telling the teachers the benefits of PBIS for the teachers in the school. And then stage 3 would be management. So we would have the PBIS research and evidence from comparable districts. Then we would have the consequences of PBIS application in the classroom and addressing student needs. We will collaborate with PBIS data sharing and future planning through PBIS.org and the PBIS store. And then stage 4 will be refocusing, adapting the PBIS with PBIS rewards, using their badges, and using that PBIS reward system to online, and having the students be able to go through and look at it online as well. And that was it for chapters 13 and 14.
I hope, and this is just a hope, that this was a review of 730 and 732. Y'all should have gotten all this in 730 and 732 organizational leadership, basically, is what this is. It's a summary of that. So hopefully this wasn't new information to you. That's why I didn't spend a lot of time going through it, because I know that this is basically the content. First chapter was content of 730 and the second one was 732. But the one thing I do want to highlight here is this. Too many times we only look at outcomes. We don't do the formative assessment to make sure that it's being implemented with fidelity and we work to improve it. We just look at the results at the end. And then we make a mistake with the results. We make two mistakes. First mistake is we only look at the results. And then the second mistake is when we look at the results, we don't understand the difference between indicator of success and a goal. Indicator of success is, let's say your reading scores are at 55. Your goal is 85. We put a new reading program in and we move 5 points, 1 standard deviation. That should have been a pretty good indicator of success. But sometimes we have people who will say, well, that program was a complete failure. We didn't achieve our goal of 85. It's not realistic to go from 55 to 85 in 1 year. Did you make a standard deviation a gain or not? So not only do we simply put something in, don't ever go look and see if it's happening in the rooms, and then just look at the outcomes, then we don't even know how to interpret the outcomes correctly. Anytime we're entering into a new program, we need to have up front, how are we going to go do our fidelity checks? How are we going to go do formative? How are we going to make sure that this is being implemented with fidelity? That's the first thing we ought to be looking at. Second thing is, what is our indicator of success? Let's be reasonable here. Let's not expect 6 standard deviations of growth in 1 year. What is one? And that should be an indicator of success if we can get 1 standard deviation. So those are the two things overall. Make sure that when you're implementing a program, that A, you go and make sure that you're checking to be sure that you're doing that formative assessment that's being implemented with fidelity. And 2, that you don't just say, here's our goal, period. What is our indicator of success? It will be part way on to that goal, but it can't be, we need to make this much gain, an unreasonable amount in 1 year. That disheartens and demoralizes teachers. That's not good. All right, very good. Golf clap. All right. Paul is still muted.
Sorry, can you
There
see
you
my
go.
screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So I have chapters 15 through 17 tonight, and I promise I won't keep you. How about that? Okay. Chapter 15, it was about providing direct assistance to teachers. And this is kind of what Miss Loretta covered with assessments and things like that. So I'll be continuing that. The focus, sorry, I need to move my, whatever this thing, okay. Focus is on the essential role of school leaders in fostering effective learning and teaching environments. You need a clear vision, goals, supportive culture, professional development, data-driven decision-making, community engagement, and recognizing achievements. Clinical supervision. Multiple ways of observing teachers consists of a set of principles and structures, and there are 12 total. The number one is in classroom based, has as its purpose both the improvement of instruction and the teacher's long-term professional development, is separate from summative evaluations, requires the supervisor's understanding of child development, pedagogy, and teacher development, requires that the supervisor possesses interpersonal observation and problem-solving skills, is non-judgmental, is based on mutual trust, requires a collegial relationship in which the teacher and supervisor are considered equals and co-contributors to the improvement processes, is data-based, gathers data based on the teacher's concerns or about the lesson to be observed, involves the teacher and supervisor in reflective dialogue, is the clinical cycle is repeated on a regular basis. So to be a clinical supervisor, it requires a lot. It is a big demand, and I'm not sure that all supervisors are meeting these 12 goals. I know I don't always meet these 12 goals in my building. Steps in clinical supervision: pre-conference with the teacher, observation of the classroom, analysis of observation data, and planning for post-conference. Post-conference with the teacher, critique of the previous 4 steps, and follow-up. As we all know, if you are someone who gives observations at this time, this requires a lot of time to do the pre-conference, to observe, and then follow up. It requires a ton of time that we don't always have. But we have to understand that these steps are very important and they should be completed each time if we want to grow our staff. It is important to do. So here is a plan for instructional improvement. I pulled this directly from chapter 15. It just is a framework. So you have the post-conference date, the teacher you observed, the time, and your name as the supervisor. Objective to be worked on, teacher activities to be undertaken, supervision, resources needed, how the plan will be assessed, and timeline for completing activities. This is just another way to keep you on track with the person you are observing, and so everyone is on the same page and they know what you are looking for.
This is what I've referred to, excuse me, multiple times tonight. You need, if you're doing an improvement plan or a action plan, the written documentation, this is what we're talking about right here. Thank you for showing this. This is exactly what I've been referring to. You must have this. This is part of due process. So not only is it a best practice, it's also part of due process. You must have this if you're doing an improvement plan or an action plan. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I think we've all heard before that if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. So you have to document that. I know in our process right now with turning our school around, we document everything. I feel like I over document, but honestly, it does come in handy. When someone says you didn't say this or we didn't do that, yes, we did. And I can pull up my documentation.
There you go.
These are the activities for each step of supervision. The pre-conference, start on a positive note. You want to begin and end on a positive note. Teacher concerns and review conference decisions. Observation, gather data, focus on description. Analysis and planning, analyze data, summarize data, plan the post-conference. Post-conference, you want to start, of course, on a positive note. Share and explain observation data, review conference decisions, critique all areas of the observation, and follow up with the teacher and observer. You all play a part in this step. If you don't follow up, then what was the point of the first 5 things that you did? You have to go back and check and make sure these things are being done. I know at my school, I like to we do walkthroughs, but I also just like to visit classrooms and give teacher a quick snapshot. We call them glows and grows. So that's just something that we do to help with teachers and supervising. Peer coaching, we all know, is very, very important. Teachers helping teachers has become the best form of support. New teachers typically do not turn to the admin team. They feel very comfortable going to someone who's already on their team, their peer teacher, someone who's on the hallway with them, or someone who teaches the same subject as they do. Who does the peer coaching help? It actually helps everyone in the building. It helps the new teacher, it helps the experienced teacher, and it also helps the admin team. You must train the observer. So you cannot just send a teacher in and say, hey, you're going to go coach this person. They must know what they're doing and what they're looking for and what they should be teaching the new teacher. And this is not a job that you assign. This is on a volunteer basis. Should a teacher who is the observer take from the observation some ideas to use, or should the teacher who is being observed take from the observation some actions to use? That was a question that came up in the chapter, and I think it goes both ways. Everyone should be able to gain from that relationship. Mentoring, the center of supporting new teachers. This is not a voluntary act. You want to assign a mentor to your new teachers. Of course, you want this to be someone who is seasoned and someone who actually knows what they're doing. Typically, admin will assign a veteran teacher to a new teacher to be their mentor. This does get tricky at a school that is the size that my school is. We only have about 250 students. And for instance, our 6th grade team is only 3 teachers. We have a math teacher, an ELA teacher, a science teacher, and they all teach social studies. So when you're trying to find a mentor for the 2 new 6th grade teachers, you don't have a lot of areas to pull from. And the veteran 6th grade teacher is not always the best choice, because at this time she has some habits that we're trying to break or get her out of. So you do have to be careful who you choose for your mentors. What to look for in a mentor. Successful mentors are student-centered. They possess both content knowledge and a pedagogical skills. They're trustworthy. They have good communication skills. They seek input before making decisions, and they collaborate with others and support their colleagues. Some benefits of mentoring. Well, first of all, not all mentor-mentee relationships work. You have to be careful and match people up and make sure it's a good fit. Successful mentors treat their mentees as equals and see their primary role as fostering their mentees' growth and development. They should want their mentee to succeed. The single most important thing the mentor can do is to develop a trusting, supportive relationship with the mentee. All right, and this is just a reflective exercise. We're not going to do it, but it's something to think about. You have been contacted to observe a principal who recently began clinical supervision. You will observe and provide feedback on the principal's performance as a clinical supervisor. What would you look for if you were to do this? All right. Chapter 16 is about evaluation of teaching. There are issues with principals evaluating teachers. Imagine that. For those of us that are admin at this time, you know that can be an issue. What are the issues? Well, a lack of evaluator preparation for using the system. We all know the system that we have to use to evaluate our teachers. It's not the best system, but it's all we have. Consequently, evaluators may lack understanding of the overall evaluation process or how to use the evaluation tools, because honestly, none of us were really trained on how to use it properly. It was here, use this. So that's what we do. The evaluator may be biased in terms of what constitutes quality teaching, or worse yet, in regard to a teacher's age, race, ethnicity, or gender. So we do have to look out for admin that may not be fair, and they may be biased to certain teachers. Sometimes we lack the knowledge in some content areas. I know for me, I was in elementary for 11 years. I moved to middle school, and I do not know all the content. I am learning, but that is a process. I don't know it all. And we are usually pressed for time, which is something I talked about earlier. The value added evaluation system. Value added means a part of the teacher's evaluation is based on student test scores and their performance. Teachers who rate low in this area are often placed on an individual growth plan. This can lead to teachers losing their job, which sometimes that's your way of moving out the bad teachers or teachers that are not effective. The connection to teacher performance and student performance has not been a positive one. Factors that influence test scores that are out of the teacher control. For instance, teachers do not control home life. They do not control whether a student is eating at home. They do not control their class size or the school environment, the curriculum, instructional resources, and social and economic factors. So there are many things that are out of the control of the teacher, but they are still expected to get those good test scores. Comparing summative and formative evaluations. Summative determines if a teacher should be granted tenure, placed on probation, or terminated. In my district, we no longer have tenure. If you had it before, then you were grandfathered in, but a new teacher coming in cannot gain tenure. Formative is intended to assist and support teachers in professional growth and to help improve their teaching. Both forms of evaluation are necessary. The primary emphasis should be placed on a formative assessment. Summative and formative eval should be separate. Most school districts have one tool to evaluate teachers. It typically leans toward a summative evaluation. Summative evaluations are not known to lead to improved teaching, and formative evaluations can consist of rubrics, classroom observations, review of student work, stakeholder feedback, visits to other classrooms, improvement plans, self-reflection, portfolio development. Technology use in teacher evaluations. We all know that we use that tool and it is on our computers. That's how we have to use it. But there's also video. I'm sorry, did you say something? No. Video use can be used for summative and formative evaluations. Do not allow videos to take away from human interactions. And of course, there are e-portfolios. They can be good and very helpful. Reflective exercise. Should formative and summative teacher evaluations be kept separate or combined into one coherent process? What are your thoughts on that? If we think about the e-portfolios, they have a number of advantages over traditional portfolios. You can easily incorporate data and a variety of evaluations and work from the teacher. It can include rubrics, teacher reflections, and other documents, as well as artifacts. I know on our tool that we currently use, there is a place for artifacts, but I have never, ever, ever seen a teacher place an artifact in that tool. Maybe they should, but I haven't seen it. And we don't require that they do that. Chapter 17, group development. There are 5 stages of group development. The first one is forming. Forming is group members are uncertain and anxious. They wonder how they will be expected to behave, whether they will be accepted, what they will be asked to do, whether they'll be able to perform, and if they will satisfy their other team members. Next, you have storming. Storming is when you have conflict that comes up. Conflict may result from anxiety about the organization's expectations, power struggles within the groups, and some from differences of opinion. Norming is through discussion and negotiation. The group develops ground rules for social interaction goals and procedures for achieving the goals. And adjourning. Performing. Performing, the group has reached full maturity and optimal performance. Although some members of the group maintain positive interpersonal relationships, their primary focus is meeting the group's goal. They just want to get it done. Adjourning, it discontinues its activities because it has completed its mission. And you can celebrate or you can just be done with each other for that particular project. Effective groups have clear goals. All team members play a role. Group members follow group norms. Group members have collaborative skills. They are organized with time, information, and other resources. Group makes adjustments as they see fit to continue to grow and improve. Group development continued. You have task roles, which are initiator, contributor, information seeker, opinion seeker, information giver, and opinion giver. Person roles, you have several of those. Just to name a few, you have the evaluator critic. This person assesses the group process for effectiveness and fairness. And I think every group needs that person. And you have the dysfunctional roles. I think we've all had several of those in group meetings. That's the aggressor, the blocker, recognition seeker, self-confessor, the jokester, the help seeker, special interest pleader, and non-performer. I believe I talked to every one of those today in my building. So dealing with dysfunctional members is not easy, but it is something we have to do as leaders in our district. Observe the member. When and with whom does the dysfunctional behavior occur? Try to understand that person and get on their level and see why they're having these issues. Communicate with the member, make sure there's an open line of communication with them. Establish some rules for future behavior. So maybe you let them know, the next meeting, you're not going to interrupt, or you're going to let other people speak, or we're not going to be angry, and redirect the unfavorable behavior. So you're really treating that person like a child in the classroom. The 5 steps outlined here will help the meeting leader understand and deal with the individual dysfunctional behavior. Applying developmental supervision to groups. There are several ways to do that. You have the directive control behaviors, lacking the expertise needed to act on the problem and without any commitment to its resolution. Directive informational behaviors that are moderately to low levels, expertise and commitment. Collaborative behaviors, which is a moderately high or mixed level. The supervisor and group have the same degree of expertise concerning the problem, and both the supervisor and the group are committed to solving the problem. And last, you have your non-directive behaviors. They possess extensive expertise and is highly committed to solving the problem. The supervisor listens as group members provide their perceptions of the problem, reflects by paraphrasing group members' perceptions and feelings. That is definitely what we want every time, but it's not a perfect world. The long-term goal, the developmental supervisor assists the group in gaining higher levels of expertise and commitment. Resolving conflict, we have lots of that in our buildings and in our districts. Conflict occurs when there is a disagreement over ideas among the team members. And group members or group leaders should follow the model to solve the conflict, and the model goes: ask each member to state their own conflicting position. Ask each member to restate the other's position to make sure everyone is listening. Ask each member if conflict still exists. Ask for the underlying value positions, and ask other members of the group if there's a third position that synthesizes, compromises, or transcends the conflict. That is the best way to take care of the conflict in the group. And to prepare for group meetings, we all know that there are tons of group meetings. We have staff meetings, we have SIT meetings, we have all kinds of meetings. Going into these meetings, you should always enter with an agenda, the ground rules, and guided discussion. I included an example of what we use at our school for our meetings. This is for our SIT meeting. At the very top, you have the code of cooperation, which lets everybody know this is what we expect. We're gonna start on time. We're gonna follow the agenda, technology as needed. Otherwise, don't be on your computer, and keep interactions positive and professional. And we all need to be reminded of that sometimes. Next, we have the purpose of the meeting and the desired outcomes. And we always stick to our agenda. Okay. And last, your reflective exercise to think about. Think back to a meeting you led or was a part of that conflict was present. How did you deal with the conflict? How did members of the team deal with the conflict? Was the conflict resolved? Anybody can share if you want. If not, I am all done.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. I have a dissertation question for the group as we close out tonight. We won't take but a second. You can stop your share. What theorist can you think of off the top of your head, if you were doing a dissertation in this area on something to do with effective meetings? What theorist could you think of that would tell you, or that you could read studies that use this theory? What theory out there would guide your behavior in trying to improve meetings in your school or your district? Which theorist? The one that springs to mind for me is Richard DeFore. What does Richard DeFore talk about? What is his area? PLCs, right?
Yeah,
Professional learning committees or communities or committees or teams. We use those interchangeably. That would be the person that I would read most about if I were trying to work on groups. You need to start. This is tangential to tonight's lesson, which was great, by the way. But you need to start thinking about, where do these dissertation kind of things come in? I'm supposed to be learning all this stuff along the way and then be able to do a dissertation at the end. This last chapter talks about how to run effective meetings and how to improve them. This is a perfect time to say, oh, there's a theorist out there that talks about this. There's been a lot of studies using his theories been done, been a lot of data collected. Aha, that's how a theorist works. So the theorist tells us what we ought to do or how to do it, or both. Primary theorist tells us what we ought to do. Secondary theorist, if we need one in a conceptual framework, tells us how to go about doing it. Content, process. Primary theorist tells us what to do, the content of what to do, how to run better meetings, how to do the professional development in that. We might use Linda Darling Hammond if we're going to run professional development on it, if we're going to train our principals to do better jobs at running meetings. The content would come from DeFore. how to manage PLCs better in their building. The how-to might come from that, but that's just one of those things. You should be thinking about those kinds of things. When we talk about different topics, think about the theorists behind those topics, that those best practices. Where do those best practices come from? They come from some theorists, and the research has been done by them and behind them, after them, on those areas. So that's where that comes from. That's how your theoretical and your conceptual framework works. And remember, a theoretical framework, one theorist covers the primary how to do, what to do, and how to do it. If your primary theorist only tells you what to do, then you need a secondary theorist to tell you how to do it. That would be a conceptual framework. That's where that comes in. This is a perfect example of that. All right. Anybody have anything for the good of the group? Did an excellent job tonight. I'm always impressed. This is real life stuff. This is what you have to do. I'm so glad Paula had those requirement pieces in there for what you have to do, those legal requirements of due process. I'm glad she touched on those things. We have the improvement side, but we also have the evaluation side. And that's a great question. Should we be doing the formative and summative? Should we put it together? In my opinion, you have to. But the bottom line has to be the bottom line. In a perfect world, we would just keep them separate, but we don't live in a perfect world. We live in an actual world, a real world. But we need to learn how to improve teachers, but we also need to learn how to document as well. That's why I said my MTSS for teachers, it looks pretty critical, but it's a big part of it. I can't get into intent. All I know is you can't teach. Whether you can or won't, all I know is you don't. And if we tried to help you and you don't show any signs of improvement, we have to do something different. That's kind of the bottom line in personnel at the building level. All right. Anybody have anything? If not, I will see you next Saturday at 9 o'clock at the Spruce Building on the campus of Wayne Community College in the beautiful town of Goldsboro, North Carolina.
There is a question. I have a question about the two PowerPoints that we're supposed to present that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
One's called Human Resources,
Yep.
and the other one's called My District's Human Resources.
Yep. And so one of them has a PowerPoint that you just fill in. The other one is the legal parts. Most of the legal, the legal part is what are the 9 steps, hiring and then dismissal. What is your district's employment process? There's 9 things that you have to do, from advertising from determining that there is an opening to advertising the opening, vetting the applications, doing the reference, the drug test, the background check, the curriculum interview, and then there's 2 more at the end of that. But up to 9 different things. What is that process and who does it in your district when you hire somebody? And then on the dismissal end, what are the steps for dismissal? That's one. That's one of those. The other one is there. So let me go to that. Let me show you. Okay. That's under Saturday of week 2, I believe. Share my screen. Move that out of the way. Close that. Don't save. All right. Qualtrics. Content here. Let me go back. Yeah, my district's human resources department assignment. This is where I want your legal functions and roles. That's, again, the legal functions are hiring and dismissal. That's the 2. And the roles, who does what? What we find is to hire somebody, there's 9 specific things, but who does those 9 is different in every district. It's the 9 same things that are in due process, but who's responsible to do the reference check? So some big districts I worked in, HR did it, and the small ones I had to do it as a principal. That's what I'm talking about. The legal functions and roles. What are the 9 things to hire somebody? Who does them? What are the steps to dismissing somebody in your district? Who does them? That's this one. This one is Fill in the blank. Basic snapshot about your district. Now, the funny thing is I've got the the links to the report card with the other one, but they go with this one. Basic snapshot. That's where that comes from, is about your staff, the teaching force. That most of the stuff's on report card. Okay, the organizational chart for your human resources department. What your departmental goals are, if they have any. The job duties of the people in HR. Do you have analysts? Do you have, who do you have? And then opportunities to grow. This is for somebody who wants to take the path to the superintendency through HR. So let me explain that. There's 3 basic paths to the superintendency in any school district. You can go through human resources. The former director of this program, Steve Laws, y'all all met Dr. Laws, he went through HR. I went through operations. You can go through instruction. Those are the three routes to the superintendency. Morgan Houchard, who was just appointed in Gaston County, he went through operations. Some people want to make a career in HR, and in terms of going to the HR department and then matriculating up the corporate ladder to superintendent. But the 3 paths again are HR, operations, and academics. And so this is so for us to know kind of what the lay of the land is in the HR department. If you want to be an HR professional and take that path to the superintendency, how is your HR department laid out? You would need to know that. That's what that one is. The other one is the legal part, is how do you hire and how do you fire somebody, and who does it? The roles are just as important. It's the same steps in every district to hire, the same steps to fire. What varies is who does it. Mm-hmm. Again, of those 9 things, I only had to do one of them in Charlotte. I had to do all 9 when I was in Burke, low wealth district, as a principal. Very important to know what your responsibility is. I mean, I had to take people to get drug tested. I had to had to call the references. When I was in Charlotte, all I had to do was the curriculum interview at the end. That was it. That was it. Somewhere between there, now the same 9 things got done, but they had people in the HR department that did the other 8. So that's what we need to know. There are 9 things to hire somebody. There's 6 things to fire them. Who does the 9? Who does the 6? That's what we want to know. You need to know that. Don't want to lose your house. This is about, this is about getting sued and losing your house if you violate federal employment law on hiring or firing. That's federal. You don't break federal law but one time. Then you have to go home if you have a home to go to. And if you don't have a job, you lose your house. You got nowhere to go. So the idea here is making sure we hit due process and don't lose our house. So we need to know what are the steps to hiring and who does it, and what are the steps to firing and who does those. That's the real. That's the grown people side of human resources. You better know that stuff because there's federal law that covers both of those. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission covers both ends of that. Again, the feds say what you have to do. Your district says who has to do it. That's roles. Is that clear enough? Mm-hmm. All right. And you see the purpose of doing that, I hope. Again, one is the legal part. The other is if you're one of those people who wants to take a path to the superintendency through human resources, or if that just is your goal to work in human resources, you need to kind of know the lay of the land of that department in your district. Pretty helpful knowledge to have. Great question. I had a note to cover that, and I covered it last night's class. All right. Anybody else have anything? That's a great question. All right. It's good to see you all tonight. I appreciate you. I'll see you next Saturday. Everybody stay safe in the storm.
Bye.
Bye.